Right, hello. I'm Theo. Don't know me, I'm a second year historian. And I'm running the SJCR chair. So the SJCR is great. It does basically everything in college that you want to do. So Freshers Week, baby ball, welfare, sports society, pretty great. Quite like it. Yeah, but none of it's possible without the sort of democratic elements behind it. So and that's the chair's job. So yeah, so I think, so my time in John's, my contribution to the SJCR has primarily been in the background. So I was assistant comms, primarily minuting committees, like FICOM and the occasional exec meeting. So through that I kind of learned how a meeting works. And then more recently I've been SJCR vice chair, so I've been sitting next to Matthew doing vice chair things, so sort of helping running the meetings. I've been, most importantly in this role, I've been in charge of elections. So as you'll probably have noticed with the presidential election, everything at the bottom, all the publicity said approved by Theo, Roose, senior returning officer. So all that publicity I had to approve, and some of it I said no to. Most of it I didn't say no to because everyone was sensible. But yeah, so that's my job. It's given me invaluable experience in learning how to be impartial, making difficult decisions in reference to the SJCR Constitution, which I think, without much hyperbole, is probably my favourite document ever. I love my Constitution. It's always open on my phone. I just refer to it when I'm bored because I'm really sad. But I like my Constitution. I've also got great experience chairing committees like Welfare Com in Matthew's absence. And I've also sat on the CRC, which I've also occasionally chaired. Constitution Reform Committee, for those who don't know. So I've got a deep understanding of the changes that are underway as we're transitioning to a charitable incorporated organisation. Add this to this experience, my experience as a FREP, so I know kind of what makes freshers interested in the SJCR and what makes them not interested in the SJCR. So I think I'll be valuable in terms of promoting it to the freshers. In my role, I'm hoping to change a few things. So I intend to improve publicity by collaborating more with the comms team. And also improving and developing the guides and processes and functions. So like I did with the single transferable vote system for the presidential election, giving a guide to just explain how it works and clarify some things. I'd also improve the committee systems, making them more accessible, which I think is really important because I don't think they're always as accessible as they could be at the moment. And also make agendas more efficient, publicise them a bit more, make them a bit clearer in terms of timings, just to speed up everything and make them work better. Finally, I'd like to move the SJCR meetings back to Mondays like they were last year. Because I think this reduces clashes with other things going on in college and around the university. So to conclude, I'm passionate about the SJCR, I quite like it, it's quite fun, and I think I'd be good at being the chair. So please vote for me. Thank you.
Okay, clarification.
Well, I have no feelings on Mondays or Thursdays. Are you aware why the SJCR meetings were originally moved?
I was under the impression it was just a general personal preference. Not personal preference, but like, well, not really, no.
I can't say anything, but whoever who knows the reason can say it.
All's work on Mondays. You have to get there at 7:30.
Okay. Well, I could, alternatively, I could, as a democracy, I could consult with the student body to see when the preferable date for an SJCR meeting is, and we might keep them at Thursdays. So, just provisional. Maybe Mondays, maybe Thursdays, maybe Wednesdays. Probably not Wednesdays, but...
Okay, any other clarification? Actually, any other clarification?
This is not a clarification, is it? It's a question.
No, it's a question. Any other clarification? Okay, we'll move to general questions. No, sorry, not general questions. Sorry, Jakeerat has to come up first.
I'm prepared a written speech to
It's fine.
Sorry.
Do I start now?
Yes, sorry.
So I'm a first year law student here at St. John's, and my fascination with the role of chair goes back to my first SJCR meeting. I remember a young lad sitting there and seeing Matthew. There's just something fascinating about an Asian law student holding a mallet. And from there, I wanted to get more involved with the SJCR, so I took on the role of the Assistant Comms Officer and then the CRC to gain a better insight. And now that I've seen from a different view what the SJCR does for us as students and how it develops our experience around college, I would like a more important role within SJCR and something that suits my abilities as well as something that balances it. So as the Assistant Comms Officer, I've got the opportunity to minute and monitor many meetings. So I've seen the role of the SJCR Chair and very closely observed the SJCR Chair, pretty much. And with the Constitutional Reform Committee, one of the main roles of the SJCR Chair is to update constitutional documents. And being a member of the Constitutional Reform Committee, I've gained significant exposure to discussing, deliberating and interpreting constitutional documents. And the third thing I'd say, as a first year student, a part of responsibility as a chair is to hear the voices of students, and the student contribution to the SJCR significantly reduces as they go up the years. So first year it's more, second year less, third year sometimes non-existent. So as a first year student, I'm in college. I get to talk to different students so they can channel their concerns to me, which makes me suitable to channel the concerns of other students. So I'd say that would be it for my side. If I get elected as the chair, I'll try to do everything in my power conferred to me by the constitutional principles to uphold the decision of the SJCR in the name of peace and democracy. So, yeah.
Are there any clarifications for Jakeerat? Are there any clarifications?
Right, are there any questions?
No, not yet. Wait.
Can I do a clarification?
Clarification.
So you talk about what you want to do, and that you've observed Matthew, but what is your understanding of what the role of chair does?
Right, so it comes from two perspectives. So I've seen the Matthew chair the SJCR meetings, getting the pizza for everyone, ensuring that decorum is maintained, the procedure is followed, and the chair supposedly serves as an impartial arbitrator on contentious issues. But I think the role of chair is more than that. The chair serves as the backbone of the SJCR. He organises committee meetings, etc. So, for example, as the social secretary, there has to be a meeting, someone has to organise that, someone has to chair that in order for those matters to be discussed. So, within the SJCR, the role of the chair is quite central to its functions, I'd say, if that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay. You can come back up. So, we're going to go to general questions. Abby.
Question that gets asked every single time. What's your favourite part of the Constitution?
What's what?
What's your favourite part of the Constitution? Like your favourite line or
I'd say in the CRC I spend a lot of time defining what students mean in the Constitution. So the definition of students as defined by the SJCR Constitution, which is members, more specifically, so student members, what are the other ones? Sabbatical members, honorary members, how the SJCR, the Constitution defines it is quite fascinating.
I enjoy the line about stranger in the house. So if you have a non-SJCR member in a meeting, someone is allowed to call out stranger in the house, at which point everyone shouts, "Let the cat out," and they're escorted out of the meeting. It's just a bit silly. Similarly, I quite like the idea that the president is allowed to dictate gown wearing. But that's second. So, Anna, if you want to play around with the gown wearing next year. Second through this, let the cat out's the best.
I was going to bring a gown down, and I decided that it might be problematic.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Anna?
How would you balance your personal views in this role as often you be impartial?
I think I go first this time.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm quite opinionated, but I think I'm quite diplomatic as well. I've been vice chair for a while. I don't think I've ever had a problem with not expressing my views in meetings, for example. Obviously, in presidential elections, I wasn't allowed to say who I wanted to vote for. I couldn't vote. I think I've managed that quite well. I think it's just a case of sort of just accepting that you have a different role and you can't sort of participate in debate, but you can sort of facilitate debate instead. So I'm happy to sort of have that exchange instead of having my opinions known, keep them to myself.
I'd say I'm quite an opinionated person as well, and I hold certain biases, but I'll try to remain as impartial as possible, and if I have to sort of exercise my own opinion, I'll take Matthew's approach and just say this shouldn't sway your decision in any manner, or you shouldn't, don't think I said this, but, and then I'll take my opinion.
The delegation to vice chair isn't really strictly set out. I think it's part of the vice chair's description says workload dependent on what the SJCR chair decides not to do, essentially. How would you manage delegation to your vice chair, which obviously you don't think that would be yet, because they get elected next meeting?
You're first.
Right. Personally, I'm not really that familiar with the role of vice chair, to be quite frank. I'll definitely look into it if I can. But yeah, I can't answer the question because I'm not really familiar with it. To acknowledge that.
Obviously I'm sort of familiar with the role, having held it myself. I think the role of vice chair could be absolutely minute, it could be huge. It obviously depends on how much the chair gives you. I think it's quite important to make sure it's balanced so that you're not giving the role huge amounts to do, but actually you're giving them enough to basically maintain interest. I think I've had quite a good amount to do. Obviously, the vice chair's in charge of elections stays with the vice chair. But similarly, it's sort of a case of basically maintaining contact with the vice chair, sort of letting them know what's going on, maybe asking them to send out some more emails, that kind of thing. Basically, just maintaining that sort of actually they do have it's a significant role, the vice chair, and it should be treated as such. And I think I found that. And so it's basically maintaining it as a role, supporting, not just sort of when there's something you don't want to do, just palm off for the vice chair. Yeah.
If you were chair, what chair would you be?
I would be a chaise longue. Last time I did this, I didn't elaborate, but this time I'm going to elaborate because they're laid back, but I don't know, they're comfy. So I don't know what that says, but I'd be a chaise longue.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with chairs too.
Just any chair, you can have whatever you want.
That one.
Right. Got you.
At no fault of any individual, these meetings can tend to be quite bureaucratic and long. As chair, how do you streamline the process?
Could you simplify your question, please?
How do you make sure that we're not here till 10 past 9 on a Thursday night after breaks? As chair, how do you make the meetings more quick, bureaucratic, whilst also getting everything in?
So to answer your question, and this will be undemocratic too. So it is true that every voice should be heard. But in the interest of time, some of the questions that are asked in the SJCR meetings don't significantly contribute to the matter of discussion. So I would not consider those questions, skip over those and move on to the important ones. And I am aware of the fact that this is undemocratic, but hard decisions have to be made. So.
I think it's just a case of making sure we don't drag too long. I think back to Michaelmas 1, where we had an extended conversation about whether or not the Wine and Cheese Society should be called the Cheese and Wine Society or the Wine and Cheese Society. And I think it's important that questions are asked, but I think you ask a question and then you kind of quickly resolve it and move on, rather than just dwelling on it and going back and going forwards and going back. So I suppose it's a case of not dwelling on the same point for too long and just sort of being swift and saying, right, we've discussed it now, we can move on. But I think also it's a case of making sure that the right points are made at the right point in the meeting. So for example, if you've got a motion on, for example, disabled students, you should have the point about disabled students earlier on in the meeting in case there's an accessibility issue, so you don't, basically not sitting around. For example, if you find it difficult sitting in long meetings, for example, you don't want to be sitting in a long meeting waiting for your motion to come up. So I think it's a case of just sort of, streamlining the process really. But
okay, we have time for one last question.
So a big part of the role of chair, as I see it, is ensuring people run for roles. And a big part of how you do that is get them involved in the SJCR, and one of the ways that happens is through the first meeting, which currently is the introductory SJCR meeting that happened just after Freshers Week this year. Matthew and I have spoken at length about how we're not convinced that meeting is a good idea. It might be better to draw people straight into a proper meeting rather than a introductory one that's not very purposeful and isn't necessarily that serious. Can you offer some thoughts on that? Like, do you like that introductory meeting? Do you have any plans how you change that introductory meeting? How in general you can ensure people get involved at the very start?
Well, I think it's important to have some sort of introduction to the SJCR rather than going completely blind. I mean, I think if a fresher came into this meeting, for example, as their first meeting, they might be a bit like, what's going on? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? So I think it's important to have some sort of explanation as to what's going on. But I think I would probably agree in that if you have a separate meeting as a sort of a freshers introductory meeting, you can't really achieve any proper business because obviously it's not a full meeting. There aren't really any roles elected. Actually, it's ultimately a bit pointless. It's just an introduction. So I think it's a case of ensuring the Michaelmas one is a little bit explanatory and just explaining this is how this works, this is how that works, but primarily just having it as a normal meeting where things happen, people are elected, motions are passed, just to show that it does actually function as an organisation. It's not just a case of this is a bit silly, let's have this motion, or you can do this, you can discuss things.
I would also say that the introductory meetings are quite necessary to familiarise new students with the procedure of the SJCR. But when it comes to getting them to run for exec positions, that is not a good way. I mean, it would mostly bore them out rather than getting them interested, the way I saw it when I had my introductory meeting. But the reason why I got first interested in the SJCR was the night I came, I saw Annabelle and Libby go student hunting. One of the students was missing, probably toothpaste and fallen somewhere. So I thought of SJCR like the student coughs that I had and sort of help run things. So that was really fascinating for me, and that was one of the reasons why I decided to get more involved. So something along those lines, getting students enough exposure to the SJCR exec, their roles, what do they do. And most of the meetings are open, FICOM, CRC, so anyone can join those. So getting them more involved in those, because they actually give you a better insight into the SJCR and what it does, I'd say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm cognizant of the fact that it's 9:50.